Welcome back to Piper Carter Podcast. I'm your host, Piper Carter. It has been a minute. Welcome to December. We're at the end of the year, everyone. It is a really interesting time in the world right now. If you are tuning in, you have just arrived at the Piper Carter podcast on the Detroit is Different podcast network. So I'm going to ask you to please go ahead, like, share, of course, subscribe, hit the bell to get notifications about when Piper Carter Podcasts is going to come to you with some great information. I'm very, very, very excited about my guest this evening. Everyone has been asking about uh, how folks can get involved, give more information about what's going on in the Congo. And I'm very honored to have my guest this evening because this is exactly what he does. This is where his work is centered, and we're going to get it straight from the horse's mouth, what's going on and how to support, which is what we're about here. So without any further ado, I want to welcome Maurice Carney, who is the executive director of Friends of the Congo. Um, before I bring him up, I remember it could be maybe like 8 years ago or plus, maybe even longer. I was introduced to his work through a campaign, um, dealing, with postcard writing, to write postcards, for this very same issue, honestly. Um, and I thought that was such a very, powerful way to exercise power, but to also move something, right? And so, look, I want to talk about that letter writing campaign. I want to talk about the work, but before all of that, I want everyone to please welcome Maurice Carney. Welcome, Maurice. How are you?
Great, great. Thank you for having me, Piper. You bring back memories. Wow, that's the postcard campaign. It actually was the Dear Hillary campaign.
Mm,
When Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State under the uh, Barack Obama presidency.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, yeah, we can talk
Yeah,
about that. Yeah, for sure, for sure.
yeah. Let's So, okay, you're the executive director of Friends of the Congo. Maybe talk a little bit about Friends of the Congo, just so people understand, what the org is and
Sure.
what you do. Hmm.
Yeah, sure, sure. Friends of the Congo is a solidarity institution. We we come in the tradition of the Friends of Abyssinia from the mid 1930s. For the history buffs out there, when Ethiopia was under attack by the Italians in the mid 1930s, Pan Africanists from around the world mobilized to come to the side of the Ethiopians. You had figures like CLR James, Amy Ashwood Garvey, I think even Tom Mboya. They all came together to establish Friends of Abyssinia. So, Friends of the Congo comes in that tradition where Congo has been under assault since the late 1990s and the most recent assault. And there was a tremendous amount of uh, silence or lack of attention being paid to what was happening in literally in the heart of the motherland. So we mobilized myself, Maurice Carney, uh, Paul Pumphrey, a former Black Panther and anti-apartheid veteran, Kerry Crawford, a human rights attorney, and a mentor of mine and a Congolese individual who really inspired Friends of the Congo, biochemist, philosopher, politician by the name of Alafuele Mbui Kalala. So we all, in fact, Friends of the Congo was inspired by Dr. Kalala, and we came together to rally the global community to one, raise global consciousness about what was unfolding in the heart of the African continent, where an estimated 6 million people had perished, within a decade, from the late 1990s to the mid 2000s. And so that was one of the aims. And the second was provide support to local institutions, because we understood and still do understand that ultimately, so folks on the front lines who are going to make the most enduring and lasting change. So we set out with those two aims for about 2 decades now, that we've been pursuing our goal of raising global consciousness and providing support to local institutions on the front lines who ultimately are seeking to control the affairs, to control the resources, to control the land in the heart of the African continent for the benefit of the Congo in particular and for Africa in general.
So yeah, thanks for that. So I mean, maybe before we even go any further, I feel like what could be useful in this moment, let's talk about, the Congo, right? So I think in the Americas or the West in general, the continent in general, but definitely the Congo region is a mystery, right? We don't learn about world history at all in the United States. And in general, the histories that are taught are not the true histories, right? And so I think it would be useful and maybe beautiful for us to learn a bit about the Congo region, because there's 2 different flags, there's different cultures and ethnic groups within the Congo. I think in the West, when it comes to conversations about Blackness in general, but definitely Africa, but definitely, Congo region, it makes it seem as though all the people are the same, culture, and there's many cultures, right, within the region. And tell us about the Congo, like tell us about the culture, tell us about why you have 2 flags, tell us about the ethnic groups, like, talk to us about the people and what is it like?
Sure. It's interesting that you mentioned ethnic groups. And first, there are 2 Congos that, as you know, almost all the countries on the African continent, as we recognize them today, were product of Europe. So Nigeria, Ghana, Congo, all of them, they're created by Europeans, right? Their borders in the Berlin Conference, 1885 Berlin Conference, where some 14 European nations or so and United States gathered to establish their spheres of influence on the African continent. So the countries in Africa, for the 55 countries, are for the most part overwhelmingly the creation of Europeans. So there are 2 Congos, and the reason why there are 2 Congos is because 2 different European nations colonized the Congo. There's Congo Brazzaville, which is borders the Congo. It's on the other side of the Congo River. It's incidentally the only country on the African continent that still carries the name of its colonizer. Brazzaville is named after Savignon de Brazza, who is an Italian who conquered or established Congo on behalf of the French. And so you have Congo Brazzaville, and right on the other side of the river, you have colloquially called Congo Kinshasa, or the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And even within the Democratic Republic of the Congo, you're talking about ethnic groups. There are some 400 different cultural groups within the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So the Democratic Republic of the Congo, at first, it wasn't colonized. And coming out of the Berlin Conference, it was given to King Leopold II of Belgium as his own personal property, his private property. He owned it outright. And excellent book to consult to get a sense of that era is King Leopold's Ghost by Adam Hochschild. So you have these two Congos. But the Congo region, like the Congo Empire, you talk about our not being in tune with history, has been central, right? The Congo region, which represents the heart of the African continent, has been central to the history, the past 500 years history of African people, right? Africans at home and Africans abroad. And why do I say that? Because I say it because the encroachment of the European on the African continent in the late 1400s or so triggered the trafficking of Africans from the continent to the Americas, right? And according to Emory University database and UNESCO, almost half of all the Africans trafficked by Europeans, kidnapped, captured, and brought to the Americas by Europeans, almost half of them came from the Congo region, from Central Africa. In fact, 4 out of 10. There's a website, slavevoyages.org. People can go and they can see quickly the maps that show where Africans were taken from and brought to the Americas. So at the outset of the tragic 500-year history, right, which our sister Marimba Ani, the author of Urugu, coined the term Maafa, Holocaust, a tragic period. Congo was at the very beginning of that and suffered, really, the Congo region, the Congo Empire, suffered the brunt of the European enslavement period, right? And then we fast forward a few hundred years, right, from late 1400s to the late 1800s, when Europeans got together at the Berlin Conference. We saw that Congo loomed large again because Europeans established their spheres of influence on the African continent so that they wouldn't go to war against each other for that great big pie that they saw Africa as. And Congo was given to King Leopold II, as I said, as his own personal property. And within a 23-year period, 1885 to 1908, we see the population was decimated by half, where an estimated 10 million Congolese perished as the king extracted rubber and ivory, ostensibly to feed Western industries. So fast forward to today, where we see advances being made in technology with the cell phones and electric vehicles and all. And again, the extractive process, which really has not ended, the 500 years of extractivism, right? Beginning with African bodies, intensifying with natural resources in the late 1800s in the Congo itself, primarily rubber, ultimately to feed the auto industry, and then continue with the natural resources, continue with that extractive process to today, where there's the coltan for our phones, the copper, the cobalt for electric vehicles, you name it, natural resources coming out that feed the electronics industry, the technology industry, the automobile industry, the aerospace industry, the military industries. So Congo is filled with strategic minerals that feed those industries. And in part, because of that extractive process, we see Congolese perishing to the tune of 6 million people from 1996 to the present. What the United Nations says is the deadliest conflict in the world since World War II. And certainly the greatest humanitarian crisis at the dawn of the 21st century. So when it comes to the epicenter of the tragedy of African peoples from the 1400s to the present, Congo's loomed large in reality, right? However, very few people know about it. about what's about the Congo. As you said, it's shrouded in mystery, in part because of the way Europeans have written about Africa and Congo in particular, as Africa is a dark continent. It's mysterious, needs to be demystified. And then, Joseph Conrad's classic novella, the Heart of Darkness, basically just nailed that um, stereotype, right, or that perception that whatever happens in Africa is dark, right, mysterious, and the Congo is the heart of darkness. So that's part of the reason, to answer part of your question about why there's not much known, and what we do know is that there's rich culture coming out of the Congo. All right, Kikongo art. We're on the west of the country. Luba, people know the Luba, for their incredible cloth work and artwork. There's just so many spectacular cultures in the Congo that has influenced art and culture in the West. Picasso gained some of his inspiration from art coming out of the Congo. We see European museums in particular are filled to the brim, right, with art and materials, not only coming out of the Congo, but Africa overall. Metropolitan Museum of Art, we had done a collaborative work with them a number of years ago, where they showcase pre-colonial Congo art, just remarkable work that that was lifted, unfortunately, out, not only lifted, but was plundered, right? The cultures were plundered. The cultural contribution of Congolese and other Africans is to world culture, the world civilization, is unmistakable.
Thank you for that. That was really rich. I feel like you took us around the world, and I appreciate that. And here, I mean, maybe globally, but I can only, speak for my experience here in the United States. There's such a disconnect.
Mm.
There's a disconnect from everything. There's a disconnect from our humanity, a disconnect from our food, a disconnect from our land, a disconnect from understanding who we are, and a disconnect from just our connections to the continent. What's interesting, some people have done their DNA uh,
Mm.
testing and this kind of thing. I have not, but my aunt, my mom's sister, has done one, and some of my cousins have done one. And
Mhm.
in their breakdown, they have Senegal and Congo, right? And so
Mm.
something that
Interesting.
we've been learning is that many people here, a large number of people here, were from Congo. And
Yes.
what's devastating is once, I learned, so much about Congo, and then to learn that, that's in our lineage, it just there's such a all I can say is it's a devastation, right? To
Mhm.
see what was lost, right? Like what
Right.
was lost in not having access to all of that culture, not having access to all of that. And what's even I don't want to say more devastating as if a comparison, but I'd say what maybe as devastating is currently the generations or over time in contemporary history, the generations of people who are in Congo and everything that folks are dealing with, and there's still that disconnection. So I
Mm.
wanted to see if you could maybe speak to that aspect, because I think as we're going into this conversation around the ways in which the corporations have a stronghold on that region, I think conversations that I'm interested in as a Pan-Africanist is like our, dare I say, role.
Mhm.
And I mean from the sense of us having power, right? Because I don't want to dismiss or negate the political, I'm using the word power, but let's just say power
Mhm.
structures that exist within the Congo, right? Because I think a lot of times when we have, not you and me, but let's say the larger we have conversations, it's kind of like the West versus, whoever. And I think a pivotal part of that conversation, whether we're talking about slavery that happened 500 years ago or the current version of slavery that's happening as we speak in Congo, there is a disconnect between the existing structural powers, their
Mhm.
culture, and the people. And so I'm wondering if you could kind of speak to that. We call it corruption. We call it
Mhm.
maybe internalized oppression. There's
Mm.
many words for it. I'm wondering if you could speak to that. What is that? And how
Mhm.
does that look?
Yeah, yeah, that's wow, that's a profound question. Um, Probably the best way to respond uh, is to highlight the work that's being done, really both inside of the Congo and outside of the Congo, to reconnect, right? Because you speak about the disconnect and the power structure, and that disconnection that you're talking about, and you rightly stated, is a product of the period of enslavement, right? Is which lasted hundreds of years, is a product of the period of colonization, right? Which lasted, a little under about 60, 70 years for most African countries. And in an attempt to reconnect, because the disconnect, Piper, is not just between those of us Africans who are abroad, right, that were shipped abroad, and those who are at home. But the disconnect is also on both home and abroad is the education away from our culture, from our roots, right? The process of colonization, one of the fundamental driver of colonization, right, was to separate the African from him or herself, to separate the African from his or her culture, his or her heritage. And uh, it's paramount that we recognize that off the bat. That's the point of departure, right? So we work with we work with a range of in solidarity with a range of partners uh, across the Congo, right? And one of the groups, they're called Yole Africa, and they have an incubator in the east of the Congo at the epicenter of the violence that has occurred in the Congo in a city called Goma, about 2 million people or so, right in the area bordering Rwanda, Burundi, and Uganda. And the youth at Yole, they have uh, set out on a path to decolonize the African mind. And as a part of decolonizing the African mind, a fundamental part of it is reconnecting with a culture in terms of the food they eat, in terms of how they, the spiritual system, in terms of the clothes they wear, what they draw it from, and it's this process of reconnecting with their heritage, their culture, their ancestry, that they are then in a position, to reclaim their African mind. And in doing that, anyone who sets out on that path to decolonize the African mind, it ultimately leads you to connect with Africans globally, right? I don't know of a decolonized African who is not curious or in pursuit of connecting with Africans, connecting with the global African family. So there is work being put into that. I just use that as an example to share the methodology and the process through which one particular group of Africans in the east of the Congo are pursuing this path of reconnection. And that is in part why, Piper, that they're in partnership with Friends of the Congo, because we are a Pan-African institution that ardently pursues the decolonizing of the African mind, in the pursuit of decolonizing process, whether at home on the continent, not just in the Congo, because we work with groups throughout the African continent, at home on the African continent or abroad. And we're not just based in the United States, solely based in the United States, but we work with groups, African brothers and sisters throughout the Americas and the diaspora. So that reconnection is not solely a question of reconnecting with Africans back home, but actually reconnecting with the African self. And if you were to travel anywhere in America, just about anywhere in America, is really to Brazil, Bahia, or to Colombia, Choco region, or to Venezuela, Bonaventure, you see, or even to Cuba, where they practice Apollo spiritual system, you see that how Africans have maintained their practices, and how they've actually stayed connected with their African selves, and are seeking to be reconnected with the continent at large, and are doing so. So it's a two-way street, that reconnection that you raised. The path of reconnecting with ourselves, and by virtue of reconnecting ourselves, the logical extension of that is reconnecting with the global, or connecting with the global African family.
Yeah. And so I wanted to start with that because I really love to center the power of Black folks within these conversations that we have around the ways in which people try to take power from us. But now let's talk about the culprits. So maybe it would be helpful to so um I I want to preface for folks that this conversation involves.
Piper,
Yes,
quickly,
yes, yes.
just quickly, Piper, before you get to the culprits, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wanted to say something else, or add something that's about that question of power,
Yes.
because ultimately, this is what it's about, right?
Yes.
In fact, if you take the Congo, for example, the singular pursuit, right, is for, if you accept the definition of power as the ability to define your own reality, right? And so it's that pursuit of controlling and determining the affairs of the Congo that's front and center. We're going to talk about the culprits, but with Friends of Congo and working with our partners on the front lines, the dominant pursuit, right, is to control and determine our own affairs, control the culture, right, control the resources, control the land, define our own reality. And Congo is a strategic geographic location in the African world that once Africans control really one of our brothers said the chakra of the continent. If you liken the Africa to a body, right? Congo is the heart. So the premise is once Africans control the heart of the body of the African continent, right? Then what that does, it serves as a trigger or for the control of the continent as a whole and the African world, right? So that pursuit of power is central to the work that we do in solidarity with our brothers and sisters in the heart of the African continent. And standing in the way of that are the culprits that you're gonna ask about.
Yeah, and so thanks for bringing us right there because ultimately the what you just so eloquently have given us is the root of why I wanted to enter the beginning questions, right, around who are the people of the Congo, right? What is the culture like, so that as we are having this difficult conversation, staying rooted in that concept of helping people wherever we're so-called helping people, but the way in which Friends of Congo is helping Congolese people is being led by the Congolese people, right?
Absolutely.
So just want to keep us like right there, just to keep everyone in that thought process around the power. And thank you, for centering us there. So, and do want to give a trigger warning that we are going to talk about some things that have to do with child labor and slavery and exploitation. So if you are sensitive to that, and please take care of yourself, because this is a conversation that needs to be had, and there are some harsh realities that people are facing in this moment. And so I'm going to ask you to not for the shock value, but for the
Right.
reality value of us understanding what is the current state of, well, there are many atrocities that are taking place in Congo. So
Yeah.
can you please ground us in the realities
Sure.
of what the various, dare I say, atrocities that are taking place.
Mhm.
We know
Sure.
that the biggest aspect that we're pushing for right now is around the mining. But
Mhm.
if you could just kind of ground us in, what is happening, and just, give it to us raw, because I think that it's important for us to understand the levels of devastation that are occurring
Mm.
in this moment, and the gravity
Mm.
of this moment, and the necessity for people to be involved.
Right, sure. And
Mhm.
really, it depends on where you are in the Congo, right? We're talking about a country the size of Western Europe, right? Located right in the heart of the African continent, straddling the equator. It's bordered by 9 other African countries. No country on the African continent has that many countries bordering it. It's the second largest country in Africa in terms of area. It's the fourth largest in terms of population, about 100 million people or so. And in the east, as I mentioned to you before, bordering Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, that's the epicenter of the violence, right? That's where we see that uh, Rwanda and Uganda, in particular, other countries as well, invaded the Congo twice, coming from the east, first in 1996 and then again in 1998. And those two invasions, particularly the second one, triggered what many analysts call Africa's First World War, where that's where we get the figure of an estimated 6 million people perishing as a result of the conflict that was triggered by Congo's neighbors who were backed up, right, in terms of arms, finance, training, intelligence, equipment, backed up by the United States and the United Kingdom, but mainly the United States. So it triggered the loss of an estimated 6 million Congolese, half of them children under the age of 5. The deaths came about from the conflict, but also conflict-related causes. Hunger, the starvation, the diseases that you get from being driven into the forest, the malaria and the cholera, the dysentery, diarrhea. That contributed to what the International Rescue Committee, who did the studies, call excess death. And that conflict continues to this very day in the east of the Congo, because Congo's neighbors, who went in under the rationale of protecting their security interests, really were just in plundering the country, extracting its gold, the timber, the coltan, the tin, the wolframite, all of that coming out of the east of the country. And to this very day, 25 years later, we see Rwanda, once there was a peace deal established in the early 2000s, Rwanda would then, they had to withdraw their troops from the Congo, but they sponsored proxy groups in the east. Both Rwanda and Uganda did. And that's where you get these horrific figures and cases of women being, I don't even know if rape is an appropriate word, or to really give you the magnitude of what the war was fought literally on the backs and the bellies of women, with their private parts being disfigured, being gang raped, and being held as basically slaves to militia groups, where you have hundreds of thousands of women were systematically raped as a strategy of war, right? And it is so bad that it got world attention. These women being raped in the east of the Congo, to the point where in 2018, a remarkable doctor by the name of Denis Mukwege, who runs an institution called the Panzi Hospital, won the Nobel Peace Prize because he had repaired tens of thousands of women whose private parts had been literally ripped apart. Fistula, and some of you may be familiar with that in the medical discipline. There's an epidemic of fistula because the militia groups would use any instrument they can to literally destroy the private parts of women. So Dr. Denis Mukwege went and worked with the women, repaired the women, and won a Nobel Peace Prize for not only his work with women, but his outspokenness, calling for justice against the perpetrators. So that's in the east of the country, the epicenter of the violence, where the children, the women, the elderly are really the main victims of this war of aggression and plunder coming from Congo's neighbors, U.S. allies, and they wouldn't have been able to get away with the crimes, war crimes, crimes against humanity, crimes of plunder for the last quarter century without the United States running interference to prevent accountability, covering for them, to stop any march towards justice for the Congolese people, or even to end impunity in the region. So our tax dollars have been financing these atrocities in the east of the Congo, just that we don't know about it, because as you said earlier, it's this, so it's mysterious, it's the heart of darkness as we see it. And then, people don't fully get the geostrategic element. They see Africans fighting and killing, it's a tribal warfare. That's what it is. That in the general conception or misconception, this is what has happened, since time immemorial. and it will continue to happen. That's what Africans do. So that's in the east. In the south of the country, you also have mineral wealth, and that's where you have really the economic engine of the Congo itself. It used to be called Katanga. It's been broken up into a number of provinces, and that's where you find the copper. That's where you find the cobalt. That's where you find the nickel. That's where you find the uranium. I don't know if any of your viewers watched the recent movie that came out, Manhattan, that spoke about the United States developing the atomic weapons. Well, the U.S. couldn't have developed its atomic weapons that it ultimately dropped in Japan without the uranium from the Congo, which Congo had the highest quality and largest quantity uranium that was shipped from the Congo right into New York to facilitate the development of the atomic weapon. I don't know if the movie, I haven't seen the movie, if it goes into that or not. I don't think it does much, but there is no Manhattan Project atomic weapons without Congo's uranium. So that southern part of Congo is that industrial engine. That's where the state gets the majority of its receipts, because there you have two types of mining taking place in the cobalt mines and the copper mines, and you don't get cobalt. Cobalt is really, there's really no such thing as a cobalt mine, because cobalt is a byproduct of the mining of copper and nickel, right? It's a byproduct. So you have the industrial mining that takes place there, where you have major global companies. Right now, it's dominated by the Chinese. It wasn't always that way. The United Nations have published a report in several reports from 2001, 2002. They listed some 85 companies that had violated the Organization of Economic Community or Development in Europe, OECD, and I think there may have been just one Chinese company on there. This was in early 2000, but now Chinese companies are in. But you have the industrial mining on the one hand, and then the other, you have the artisanal mining. Industrial mining, of course, is mechanized, major companies coming from around the world. Artisanal mining is a major form of income for Congolese. It ranges from, I don't know, 200,000 to 1 million artisanal miners. The World Bank produced some estimates, but it's really tough to nail it down. But they basically, artisanal miners are miners who dig with their hands, dig with rudimentary tools, deep tunnels, basically the copper, the cobalt, the whole bit. They're doing it with hands. And that artisanal mining of minerals, cobalt, accounts for about 20% of the cobalt that comes out of the Congo, but it's all mixed together, right? You cannot distinguish between the artisanal mining and the industrial mining. So when I recently watched an interview with Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, said that, well, we don't source minerals from mines in the Congo that are involved in child labor. There's no way you can say that. You can prove that. In fact, New York University, the Stern School of Business, did a study this year where they laid out how it is that the industrial mining and the artisanal mining is indistinguishable. It's so mixed up that it's impossible, that's the word they use, impossible to distinguish. So because it's impossible to distinguish between the artisanal mining, which also is a product of child labor, and the industrial mining, then Apple cannot make the claim that it sources the minerals that it sources from the Congo for its phones and its devices are clean. That's just impossible. If we believe the New York University Stern School of Business and their studies. So what happens is that in those mining areas, artisanal mining, you have child labor, you have women who are in there, and both with the artisanal and the industrial mining, there are really three devastating impact. There is there's a dislocation, right, where people are moved from their land, the ancestral land, to create space for developing of these huge mines, right? There is the death where people die, digging into the holes, the cave-ins, people get asphyxiated. So the displacement, you have death, and then you have destruction of the environment, where, especially from the industrial mining, where the waterways get polluted, where fish no longer are able to survive in the water that's polluted, because a lot of these minerals are radioactive. So it gets in the water system, it kills the fish. The dust, a tremendous amount of dust, it covers whatever plant and is grown that the farmers are trying to grow, to the point where the land becomes barren. So it's like a moonscape. You see the moonscape throughout the, the land. And you also have a situation where, because we're dealing with radioactive material, the women, right, they give birth to deformed children, right? And there are studies that have been done by Lancelet and even local Congolese doctors that demonstrate that the women in the Congo, in that region, in the south of the Congo, have the highest level of radioactive material in their bodies of any women on the planet, because of the mining environment. So you have child labor, their deaths, their injuries, women giving birth to deformed children, the children who are alive grown with asthma and all kind of illnesses that they have. So it's a devastating impact, not only on the land, but also on the people. And this is in part why Attorney Terry Collingsworth of the International Rights Advocates has brought a suit against companies that are at the tail end of the supply chain, like Tesla, Microsoft, Google, Dell, and Apple, 5 companies that he's brought a suit on behalf of Congolese children and their families, saying that these companies have sourced minerals from companies that use child labor, and has resulted in deaths and injuries of children in the Congo. And that suit is in the courts, in the district courts of Washington, D.C. I know I took a long time with that answer, but I wanted to give you a sense. I haven't even gotten to the west of the Congo, or the center of the Congo, even the northeast, where we have violence, we have impact right now in the Isangi region of the Congo, in the heart of the rainforest. Some of our partners are facing tremendous floods as a result of the climate crisis. Before, they used to have one rainy season at the end of the year, but then now they have two. So the rainy season in the spring and rainy season at the end. So increase in rain, and increase in the intensity of the rains and the floods that have just devastated communities in the heart of the rainforest, in the middle of the Congo. So with this large country the size of Western Europe, the tragedies are just enormous, and as you said, very difficult to deal with.
So, first of all, I want to send everyone that you just spoke of just some energy and some love. Um, you just laid like a whole bunch of heavy stuff on us, and this is something that you said you haven't even gotten to, the center, or right, the western region.
Or the
So
or the West, because on top of all of that, Piper, you have a situation that 100 million people, right? You have uh, 7 million that are internally displaced, right? You have 25 million, a quarter of the population, that are at risk of starvation. Nowhere else on the planet do you have that many people at risk of starvation. These are 25 million, that's entire countries, right? And at the same time, you have a situation where according to the World Bank, 6 or 7 out of every 10 Congolese live on less than $2.15 a day. That's extreme poverty, right? They're living in abject poverty. Of this, of the 100 million, up to 60 to 70 million live on less than $2.15 a day in a country that economists claim has an estimated value in terms of mineral value of $24 trillion, right? That's about the size of the gross domestic product of the United States. So you have, on top of all of these atrocities, extreme poverty and unimaginable in cities like Kinshasa, where a daily pursuit for the average person is trying to find something to eat. A city of 14 million or so, larger than New York. So I just wanted to interject that as well around, the layers, right? From the most extreme down to the most, well, I can't even say it's benign, living on $2.15 a day and living abject poverty. There's nothing benign about that. That's a form of violence against the people.
Yeah, man, we could do an entire podcast about just what's going on in the Congo. Um and maybe I need to bring you on more times so that we can continue to support the work that you're doing, but also because I think it's very important for us to have this political education that you're giving us.
Mhm.
Um I think, at least in my experience, uh African news, in the West, any news that's dealing with the continent, it's a blurb, it's a moment, it's the height of something and then it goes away. It's a very fleeting story in the back or in the distance. And so I really appreciate you making the time and the space to ground us in the beauty of the culture and the people, and also the realities of what are going on right now, because I think the conversations are always in the West about back then when we quote unquote had slavery.
Mm.
There's this slavery that's going on right now,
Mhm.
death, destruction going on right now. And we talk about uh the atrocities that are happening, all over the world. I think that it's very easy for us, again, going back to the disconnection, for us to just be disconnected.
Mhm.
And I think, this uh, political education actually brings us closer to understanding, you know, what is it that is happening. I think it gets very confusing, like you said,
Mhm.
purpose.
Right.
And so thank you for making this very plain, and for all of the people that are suffering in this moment. I just need to take like a second and just send so much love to the people that are suffering in this moment. And thank you for the explicit, explanation, because I had like 10 basic questions. You've answered at least 8 of them. I do wanna bring you back because I would like to dig in more, you know,
Yes, yes,
to these
yes.
areas. But I do wanna, I'll say, maybe like end with like 2 questions that I think
Okay.
that we need to talk about before this episode, right?
Mhm.
So, and I'm gonna combine like a couple of my questions because I think they might be a little bit similar. You've spoken to, I had questions about, like what was happening. Um, and you've touched on the ways and you've named, the lawsuit, and you've named some corporations. So I think I want to like combine a couple questions, and my questions are around um, I would say, well, you kind of touched on like the complicitness of major tech companies
Mhm.
but I'm wondering if you could speak to their role in uh you know keeping the exploitation alive, as we could say. And then also, I want to maybe combine that uh, with like what major obstacles do you see that are preventing meaningful change in justice?
Yes, sure. Thank you for that question. And I will segue from the previous question that you asked into answering this question. I wanted to those what I shared about what's happening in different parts of the Congo, whether it's at the epicenter of the violence in the east, the exploitation of the mines in the south, the climate crisis in the heart of the rainforest, the abject poverty that we see in the cities like Kinshasa. At every uh, point, right, within the country, you have uh, you have local Congolese who are on the front lines who have incredible solutions for all of those challenges: the conflict in the east, questions in the issues of the rainforest and climate crisis, and poverty in Kinshasa, and so on. Just incredible solutions coming out of this uh, resilient population that is facing remarkable odds, right? And because they're facing remarkable odds, they have come up with incredible solutions. So part of the work of Friends of the Congo is to uplift, amplify what is being done to transform the Congo, to for Congolese to reclaim their own affairs, to reclaim their land, reclaim their wealth, not only for their benefit, they're clear, it's not solely for their benefit, but for Africa overall, right? So that's why we say this movement around the Congo is as important today as the Free South Africa movement was yesterday, because Congolese are successful, then they're able to have a tremendous impact on the continent, the advancement of the continent as a whole. With these companies that are involved in the Congo, they're part of the obstacles that Congolese face. They're really about five major structural obstacles that Congolese face within the framework of a global capitalist system, right? Capitalism is the dominant force working against Congolese. And within that framework of capitalism, you have the local elites, they're referred to as compradors, that are forces working against the Congolese people. You have neighboring countries, I've listed them: Rwanda, headed by Paul Kagame, and Uganda by Yoweri Museveni. You have multilateral institutions like the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, International Finance Corporation. Those are really the Paris Club. Most of them are based in Washington. The World Bank wrote the mining laws for the Congo that governs how Congo deals with its minerals. Right? And then you have foreign governments: United States, United Kingdom, France, and they're agents of neocolonialism like Paul Kagame of Rwanda, Yoweri Museveni of Uganda. They couldn't get away with the crimes that they're getting away with without a cover and running interference that's run by their backers in the West. And then, of course, you have the multinational corporations, and it ranges from Apple and Dell right down to Glencore, for example, major corporation that's plundering the Congo. Individual business people like a gentleman by the name of Dan Gertler, who's on the U.S. sanction list. He's become a billionaire. Israeli guy who's become a billionaire off the Congo, where he takes his money back to Israel to build settlements on the West Bank. And right now, the Biden administration is exploring taking him off the sanctions list. So you have those five forces: local elites, neighboring countries, multilateral institutions, foreign governments, corporations working against the Congolese people. So with those forces working against the Congolese people, that's why we're heartened. You mentioned Palestine and atrocities, the activists around Palestine that's fighting against to stop the genocide that Israel is committing against the Palestinian people, they've created space in their view to take into consideration other atrocities that are unfolding in different parts of the world. And Congo is front and center in that, in their framing. And so we've witnessed a tremendous amount of solidarity from Palestinian activists. Those who are outraged about what's happening in Palestine are also outraged about what's happening in the Congo, outraged about what's happening in Sudan, outraged about what's happening in Haiti. And they've rallied to the side of the Congolese people. And it is that kind of people's movement, Piper, that's ultimately going to make the difference. I think we're seeing a paradigm shift in how this generation is able to occupy several issues at the same time and mobilize around them, understanding that they're all connected, that oppressed people throughout the globe are connected and are deserving of solidarity. And that's what we see unfolding in the Congo today. And it's really harkens to the prophetic words of Patrice Lumumba, Congo's first democratically elected prime minister, who was overthrown by the CIA and the Belgians and the US government and the United Nations, ultimately assassinated, who wanted Congo's wealth to be utilized for the benefit of Congolese. Within 7 months of his taking office, he was overthrown and assassinated. He said in the last letter to his wife, Pauline, he said to Congolese, he said, "We're not alone. Africa, Asia, free and liberated people from every corner of the world will always be found at the side of the Congolese." And today we see Palestinian activists, other activists found at the side of the Congolese. And it's this mass of people throughout the globe that are going to be needed to support the Congolese, taking into consideration those 5 forces that I've laid out that are against the Congolese people. But if we have people power on our side, Palestinian activists, other activists from around the world, Pan-Africanists, right? Then the Congolese resolve will be strengthened, and their movement and their effort that's already on the way will be accelerated. That's why we're mobilizing on our Instagram. If you go to our Instagram and Facebook, we've launched a campaign, end of year campaign, to support the movements on the front lines in the Congo. We're reaching out to people to make a financial contribution to support those organizations that are already doing the work, and the financial support would accelerate the work that they're doing and also expand it to the point where ultimately we're hoping to get a critical mass that can transform the heart of the African continent.
So let's go there. So I think for this episode, let's kind of end on that part and but I want to bring you back like a few like more times because again you've talked about so much, but then there's so much that you didn't get to talk about. And I think the audiences who are in my ecosphere, we're working on so many issues, like you said, like all at the same time.
Yes.
And what we're not doing though is we're not really involved in your work. We're not really involved in what Friends of the Congo is doing. Even myself, right? Like even myself, of all the
You can't say that. I mean, you're passing
well,
out. You invited us to Detroit. We were in the
but I
space
mean,
of Detroit. They were filling out the postcards and
yeah,
bombarding Hillary Clinton, like, "Hey, Hillary Clinton, do right by
yeah, we did do a party.
do right
So
by the
let's talk
Congolese
about
people."
that. Yeah, let's talk about how people can support. Because like when I say even myself, I'm thinking
Yeah.
about that was a long time ago, right? Like, right, and people need help
Right.
right now. We
Yeah.
do have in the description ways that people can go and support. Let's talk about that campaign that you did. I think that was really genius. I had heard about campaigns like that, but participating in it, I felt very empowered. I felt
Nice.
good about bringing folks into it, and then other people felt good about being a part of it. I feel like it helped us. It was a very simple postcard that kind of encapsulated what was going on and how and who to target, and then like how to support. But I think
Yeah.
talk about like, you know, the ways in which the work that you're doing can involve others so that people can see themselves as a part of this work.
Sure. Three ways. One, and these three ways can be found at freecongo.org. Freecongo.org. One is to pressure these tech companies, call on the tech companies to do right. We have a petition on freecongo.org that people can go and sign. It's a letter to the tech companies that are being sued by Attorney Terry Collinsworth. And you can take it to the next level as well by downloading a postcard. We have a postcard on freecongo.org. They can download. High school students are doing it. They're getting their clubs, university organizations. The postcards are pre-addressed. You just have to put a stamp on it and send it in to the 5 companies. And that has a more of an impact than the petition itself. So that's number one. Sign that petition, put pressure on the companies. 2, join the movement. On that same page, you can you can join the Free Congo movement. You can volunteer. You can help us on social media. We want to make as many people as possible know about what's happening in the Congo and driving them to our action page at freecongo.org. So there's an opportunity for you to sign up. Some people, we've gotten calls from people in Australia. They're like, we're really struck by what's happening in the Congo. We want to go. We want to go on a delegation. I said, well, our delegation is in June 2024, June 20th to July 20th. We have a delegation that'll be going to the Congo. And they're like, no, we want to go now. So we made a special arrangement for them to go in January, to actually see what's happening, to be with our partners on the ground. And they said they're also going to mobilize their network to come in June as well. So join the movement. That's on that freecongo.org page. And third, make a financial contribution to support the movements on the ground. Hit us up at Congo Friends on Instagram and at Congo Friends on Facebook to be a part of our end of year campaign. We aim to raise $100,000. We cracked the $15,000 mark today. I think within about 5 days or so, we've raised $15,000. So we're well on our way to that 100,000. So you can be a part of it. If you have access to large influencers on Instagram, hit them up. Get up into Amanda Seal's DM and say, hey, support this Free Congo movement, support the end of year campaign. The Shade Room, the Shade had just published something on displaced people in the Congo. We have local groups in the east of the country that are working with displaced folks and providing a local solution for the displaced, internally displaced people. So follow up with Shade and say, hey, you did something on what the problem was. Maybe now you can do something on what the solution is. And Friends of Congo is connected to local institutions that have the solutions, been working on the solutions. They just need additional support so that they can scale the solutions. So those are the 3 ways. Pressure on the corporations at freecongo.org. You can sign a petition, download the postcard and get a postcard campaign going again. Join the movement. There's a form there that you can click to join the movement, and it gives you a range of ways you can participate in the movement. And third, to make a financial contribution. And right now, the main campaign that we have is the end of year campaign at Congo Friends on Instagram and at Congo Friends on Facebook. And you can get all of that at freecongo.org.
I want to thank you, Maurice, for making the time. You're a family man. You are a busy man. You are a leader, and you made some time to stop by here to
It's
educate
been a pleasure.
us and to bring us in. So thank you. Also, too, do you have any events coming up?
Yes. We have a major event, an annual event that we have called Lumumba Day. Every January 17th, we commemorate Lumumba. He was assassinated, and with his colleagues, Joseph Okito and Maurice Mpolo. There are 3 assassinations that took place on January 17th, 1961. And as a form of resistance, we're keeping their names alive. We're saying their names because the colonialists, the imperialists, the way they assassinated Lumumba, firing squad, chopped up his body into small pieces, dumped it into a barrel of acid, and at the end of the day, one of the soldiers, the Belgian soldiers, took his teeth, one of his tooth, and took it back to Belgium with him as a trophy. And so they wanted to make Lumumba disappear. I wanted to make Lumumba invisible. So by virtue of our commemorating Lumumba, we're making him visible, introducing him to a new generation every year that we commemorate Lumumba. People can go to Lumumba Day, lumumbaday.org, to join in the commemoration of Lumumba. And I know just about everyone out there knows somebody who has taken on the name of Lumumba. So you roll up on a Lumumba, somebody who's adopted the name of Lumumba, and say, hey, man, what you doing for Lumumba Day? Did you sign up to lumumbaday.org? And this year we have a graphic novel that's coming out, Piper, that's accessible to children and adults on the life of Lumumba, written by a Congolese woman. I don't think there's been a book on Lumumba that's been written by a Congolese woman who's her father. Her name is Bibiane Chefu. Her father was a member of Lumumba's political party, was a friend of Lumumba's family, and she has written an intimate story, but also a story that's accessible about the geopolitics surrounding Lumumba. But she gives from the early age right on up to adulthood how he developed as a leader, and it's called the title of the book is Lumumba, the Freedom Fighter. So we'll be coming out with that book in January as well. But you can go there and pre-order it and sign up on lumumbaday.org and just let us know that you'd like to receive a copy of the book. And when we publish it, we'll let you know and you'll be able to purchase it.
You know, you just remind me, I want to pitch all of that to my comrades at Black Power Media so that we could widen the audience for your Lumumba Day, as well as the delegation that's going to go to Congo, as well as all of the letter writing campaign and everything, the donations. And I want to shout out to some Black Power Media family that are in the chat. So shouts out to Sugar Booger and also Quajo Danso. So thanks y'all for joining. And a lot of people will probably join after, you know, this live, and you know, we'll make sure to get it out there. Again, I want to give you just much kudos and thanks for all that you're doing, and send all the people that are fighting for freedom in the Congo lots of resilience and lots of power and lots of love, and and lots of healing as well.
Yes,
Lots
absolutely.
of healing as well. And so so this has been, you know, Piper Carter podcast on the Detroit is Different podcast network. Again, want to ask you to please like, share, and subscribe, and go into the description of this episode to get all of the links to find out how to support the great work that Friends of Congo, the freecongo.org, and Maurice Carney are doing. So thank you, my friend. You have a great evening.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for listening. All right.
Thank you,
Peace.
Peace.